The assassination of President John F. Kennedy on November 22, 1963 wasn't just a national tragedy. It was a turning point in American history. It shocked the whole world, shattered trust in the US government, and left behind a trail of unanswered questions that still echo today. But behind the official story lies a tangled web of power, secrecy, and betrayal. Was JFK silenced for challenging the establishment? In this video, political commentator Myron Gaines, joined by Sneeko, dive deep into uncovering the three main groups suspected of being behind the assassination. These aren't just theories, they are names, motives, and connections that modern history books neglect.
Alright, who killed JFK?
It's a combination of three people. Italian Mafia, the CIA.
Why did they want to kill JFK? He was a good president, first Catholic. What did they have against him?
Well, that's a complex question, but a lot of people wanted JFK gone. We'll start with the CIA. He threatened to smash it into a million pieces because he didn't like all of the rogue operations they had going on. It was a clandestine operation and they were doing a bunch of things that he disliked internationally. And he didn't like Alan Dulles, the founder of the CIA. For the Mossad,
the article, Israel-Linked Assassinations, How Much is the US Really Involved, published on December 21st, 2020, examines the history and extent of US involvement in targeted operations. According to historian Ronan Bergman, intelligence sharing between the US and Israel began as early as 1951, when Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion and Mossad founder Reuven Shiloh traveled to Washington to build ties with CIA officials. That early cooperation led to Operation Balsam, Israel's intelligence pipeline to the US, which provided the CIA with valuable information and established a tradition of collaboration that continues today.
so the Italian Mafia wanted him gone because they felt like they were betrayed. What ended up happening was JFK's father struck a deal with the Italian Mafia to rig the election out of Illinois to help him win a close election against Nixon. What ended up happening was they rigged the election, ensured that he won, because Illinois is obviously a very important state to win. And once JFK came into power and administration took over, he appointed his brother, RFK, as the Attorney General. As the Attorney General, you're the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. You oversee the FBI, you oversee the Department of Justice, you oversee all the main investigatory agencies. The FBI and the Department of Justice led a probe into the Mafia, which they had been trying to avoid for a very long time. Why? Because Hoover was being blackmailed by Meyer Lansky, head of the Jewish Mafia, which we're going to talk about them here in a second, and he had pictures of him in heels, and he was also, which back then was a big deal. You lose your clearance, lose your job, etc. So this is a big reason why the FBI was neutered when it came to investigating the Mafia and how they were able to kind of run with impunity for so long. But RFK brought the Mafia in, and not only did he bring them in to answer questions, he brought them in with television cameras all over the place. And this was obviously a big deal for them because they've been able to operate with impunity for so long.
So, blackmail? Like Epstein?
Almost, yeah. Yeah. He had compromising photos of him with his deputy director. And it was widely known that Hoover was, it's just that the general public didn't know it.
Amongst the property seizures and dizzyingly large cocaine busts, a few strange details went under the radar. For one, how a batch of coke that had made its way from South America was stamped with a logo featuring an eye and a compass, the universally known symbol of Freemasonry. It wasn't a one-off. Further packets revealed the same symbol alongside the Greek letter Alpha and Omega. For some, it sparked concern about an increasing coziness between mob bosses and Masonic lodges across southern Italy. There are superficially shared values. Both were heavily repressed between the 1920s until the end of World War II as potential threats to the power of Mussolini's fascist state.
Italy was in search of a new government today for the 41st time since the end of World War II. Government number 40, headed by Prime Minister Arnaldo Forlani, collapsed yesterday under the weight of a most unusual scandal. The revelation that nearly 1,000 of Italy's elite, including 3 cabinet members, were allegedly members of an outlawed, super-secret, super-evil Masonic lodge called P2.
How were they able to get away with it and call it a conspiracy for so many years?
Well, they've been able to hide behind classifying it and, releasing things here and there, changing the names of certain things, and they've been able to kind of avoid it. And the biggest reason why they're still classified, and this is what everyone doesn't want to talk about, is because I was absolutely involved in John F. Kennedy and his brother.
Why would our greatest ally, one of the most beloved presidents of all time?
Because he threatened their nuclear program.
Why was Israel building a nuclear program?
Well, after the Suez Canal crisis in '56, if I'm not mistaken, Israel understood that they needed the nuclear bomb to be able to deter the Arab world from continuing to attack them, and they understood that if they didn't have nuclear superiority in the region, it would greatly affect their ability to exist into the continuing decades. So what ended up happening was they stole uranium from Pennsylvania, out of Apollo, Pennsylvania, from a factory, and they smuggled it to Israel, and they started running a nuclear program out of Dimona, and they did this secretly with the aid of the French.
Are American politicians aware of Israel's involvement in the murder of JFK?
I don't know if the contemporary politicians know, but the politicians back in the day absolutely knew, and they played a role because they wanted him gone. Kennedy had a lot of enemies, to include his vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson actually strong-armed Kennedy by becoming his vice president because he knew that he had a problem with women. He was a womanizer, and they basically told him, look, if you don't put me on the ticket as your vice president, we're going to come out and expose the fact that you've been committing adultery, which back then in the 60s and 50s, guys, was a big deal. Adultery as a, Catholic president would be a death sentence for his political career.
While some people like Evelyn Lincoln, JFK's trusted personal secretary, pointed to Lyndon B. Johnson in his assassination, Israel's covert nuclear program raises more darker questions. In the early 1960s, John F. Kennedy pressed Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion with letters demanding inspections of Israel's Dimona nuclear facility, suspecting a secret weapons program. U.S. nuclear scientists visited on September 26, 1962, but were intentionally misled, seeing only limited parts of the site. Frustrated, Kennedy pushed for stricter oversight. Then, on June 16, 1963, Ben-Gurion abruptly resigned, stalling JFK's efforts. By the late 1960s, the Nuclear Materials and Equipment Corporation, or NUMEC, in Pennsylvania became a flashpoint. Over 200 pounds of bomb-grade uranium vanished under its founder, American chemist Zalman Shapiro, a known CIA and FBI files reveal 4 prominent Israeli scientists privately met with Shapiro, fueling suspicions they helped divert the uranium to Dimona. No charges were filed, but declassified files hint at a cover-up tied to US-Israel relations. Did Israel's nuclear ambitions fuel JFK's death? The truth remains buried.
Is this information enough to determine if Israel is our greatest ally or not?
Well, I think the reason why they've been hiding it for so long is because it would clearly prove that they're not our greatest ally. They've been involved in of a sitting president. I mean, I find it interesting how the only person that was able to capture the assassination on video was his name Abraham Zapruder. And then if you fast forward 40 or 50 years later, in September 11, 2001, who was there to document 9/11? More and dancing at it as well. So I think if the American public understood that our greatest ally might not necessarily be our greatest ally, and that they're there at pivotal times in American history, documenting it for financial gain later on, because Abraham Zapruder sold that video for quite a bit of money in American dollars today, a couple million. I think he sold it for about 100 to 150K. And if you do that in today's dollars, somewhere around a million or two. I don't think the American public would want to continue to support our greatest ally anymore if they knew this stuff.
Okay, Myron, who killed JFK?
There were a bunch of different shooters on that day, but the shooters that I'll tell you guys that definitely you need to know about that they'll never tell you about are Jack Valenti and a guy named David Ferry.
Why do they never tell us about them?
Well, Jack Valenti is right there on Air Force One as Lyndon B. Johnson is being sworn in. He's right there on the corner. You see his eyes like this, and he's all sweaty and disheveled. It's because he had just assassinated a sitting U.S. president. He was the one that fired the kill shot.
So who were the others involved if he was the one who shot?
Well, David Ferry also shot at him as well, and the other guys shot from the book depository. They were CIA contractor guys.
How many shooters were there?
Roughly 6 to 8.
All CIA?
Pretty much. The weird thing with the CIA is they don't have actual employees. They have people that are contractors, people that are affiliated, people that are actual real employees. There's different types of employees within the CIA.
So they were contracted by who?
That's what's in the classified documents.
Who do you suspect?
I think it was a combination of multiple entities that wanting him gone, whether it was the Israeli intelligence component with the Mossad or the CIA themselves, because we know that they had an axe to grind with JFK, or the Italian mafia as well, working together. And Jack Valenti was the one that fired the kill shot that blew his head open. Because when you look at the film, you can see the head go back like this. Clearly that shot came from the front, and then the head blew out the back. And I also find it interesting too because the most famous movie that documents all of this was a movie called JFK, directed by Oliver Stone. But then you dig a little bit deeper and you find out Oliver Stone's real name is Silverstein. Then you find out that the person that funded the movie JFK was a guy named Arnon Milchan, billionaire. Another fun thing, he was a part of the intelligence program that worked on covering Israel's unacknowledged nuclear program. So let me get this straight. The most important movie and the most popular movie that documents Kennedy's assassination in American culture is a movie that was funded by billionaire that conveniently leaves out the Zionist angle, and he's a part of the intelligence program that Kennedy tried to stop with the nuclear program.
So do you think Oliver Stone knew about this from the jump, or was he also a contracted?
I think he has good intentions, but at the end of the day, the people that foot the bill get to dictate the movie. And in this case, it was a billionaire guy that just so happened to be Israeli intelligence and worked on making sure Israel's nuclear program was never publicly acknowledged.
What was the grassy knoll?
The grassy knoll was an area where there was a fence where people and multiple witnesses said that they heard shots fired from. And it makes sense because when you look at the way JFK was hit and the way that his body and his head pulled back like this, it's very obvious that the shots came from the front. But everyone tries to sit there and say the single bullet theory from the Book of Depository because that is what makes Oswald the alleged shooter. And that's why they had to kill Oswald, because he wasn't there. And they knew when the evidence actually came out and the Dallas Police Department had to go ahead and figure out who actually killed him, there would have been a problem with them being able to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So they needed him dead because he would have blew a hole in the entire story. Another funny thing a lot of people don't know, when Oswald was perp walked in front of the Dallas Police Department, he was instructed to be perp walked like that by a guy named Sam Bloom. Who's Sam Bloom? One of the members of the Texas Citizens Council that funded that trip for JFK to come down to Dallas. And who ran the Texas Citizens Council? A bunch of from the B'nai Birth, which Abraham Zapruder was also a member of.
Abraham who?
Zapruder, the guy that filmed the entire incident. The Zapruder film.
That's the only video.
It's the only video of the incident. The Zapruder film. So he was there at the perfect time to capture that historic moment. And then when Oswald is killed, he's walked in front of the Dallas Police Department against the instruction of the FBI, by the way, and he's shot by Jack Ruby. And the person that told the Dallas Police Department to move him was another.
And who was Jack Ruby?
Jack Ruby was also really named Jacob Rubenstein. He was the guy that killed Oswald, that couldn't let this secret get out as to who was really behind the assassination. And the other thing that's interesting that a lot of people need to know is that Jack Rubenstein admitted to his rabbi and to other confidentials or confidants that he did it for Israel.
What was Lee Harvey Oswald's involvement?
He was just a patsy. He was the fall guy. And this is going to sound crazy, but the Oswald that was at the movie theater when he was captured is not the same Oswald that they think worked at the book depository. Those multiple Oswalds.
Did they get the right one?
No.
What happened to the real Oswald?
The real Oswald wasn't even there. He wasn't at the book depository. And it kind of makes sense because why would they have the patsy who was supposed to take the blame for this that close to the actual event and compromise everything? He was told to go to the movie theater by someone else. And another reason why we know this is because when the police officer was shot, Tippett if I'm not mistaken, one of the witnesses that saw him get shot said that she saw two assailants running after he was shot. One of those guys was a dude named Lawrence.
Who was Lawrence Howard?
Lawrence Howard was actually one of the shooters on the book depository, CIA contractor. He was there when the Oswald, the fake Oswald, one of his body doubles, shot and killed J.D. Tippett, the Dallas police officer. And one of the witnesses that was there was a black woman. She actually said she saw two individuals running from the scene after Tippett was killed. The rabbit hole goes very deep with JFK.
Do you think the JFK files will ever be released?
I don't think so, man. I think if the American public knew that a foreign government, Israel, an intelligence agency, the CIA, and organized crime, the mafia, colluded together to kill a sitting U.S. president, they would never trust the government again. And government trust at its all-time low. The files will only exacerbate the problem.
كندي الذي قرر أن يفتش مفاعل ديمونة وأصر على تفتيشه ليتأكد من أنه يصنع أسلحة ذرية وإلا لا، ورفض الإسرائيليون، وأخيرا أصر هو على التفتيش. كان المخرج من هذه الأزمة هو استقالة بن غوريون. استقال حتى لا يوافق على تفتيش مفاعل ديمونة، وأعطى الضوء الأخضر بقتل كندي، وهكذا قتل كندي بسبب مفاعل ديمونة وإصراره على تفتيشه.